right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the August 21st, 2017 meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission, City of Lynchburg. I'd like to bring this meeting to order. I will draw everybody's attention to the statement that's at the bottom of the agenda. It sort of outlines the purpose and direction of the HPC. We'll, let's see here. Do we have a, let's see, an approval of the consent agenda? Minutes from the July 2017 meeting? Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Let's see here. Now we can go ahead and go right into the action agenda items. I understand that there was some discussion between two individuals who agreed to swap spaces. Is that correct?
Short agenda, so I'd be happy to let them go.
Okay, Mr. Glass, thank you very much. So if we'll go ahead and have action item number 7 will be addressed first. And if the representative parties for 2936 Rivermont Avenue would approach the stand, please have a seat and state your name and address for the record, please.
Kelvin Moore, architect with Moore Architecture at 616 Court Street in Lynchburg, and I'm here assisting the homeowner.
Excellent. Please go ahead and give us a description of your COA.
Well, recently, Mr. Robson purchased a wonderful house on Rivermont Avenue. So you're all familiar with that. But unfortunately, it came with an addition that's devoid of any significant architectural detail. And so Mr. Robson would like to do something to enhance that a little bit. So he's looking to borrow rake and trim details from the existing house and put them on that addition there. Remove those two windows there and install actually an original window that came off the house on the left side where that addition was. Also, that original door that we're showing came off that side too. So the items for the windows and doors are the original windows and doors that came off that house. So we thought that was pretty cool too. And that's about it. We just want to make that thing that came with the house look a little bit more attractive.
Has the applications committee had an opportunity to review?
Yes.
I may have gotten this wrong, but my interpretation of this is that this window was there at one time, but I think from what you just said, it was from a different location?
Yeah, see where that addition is on the left side of the house?
Yes.
When that was installed, they took out that window and they took out that door. And it was saved, and we had that already. So those are the original door and windows that we were putting back in there.
But were they in that location?
In that addition?
They
Yes.
were on the side.
No,
They were on the side of the
left
house.
side.
Gotcha. Do you know when that addition was put up?
I do not.
I think I was told the 70s or 80s. I toured the house right before you bought it. And so, yeah, we saw where that window used to be on the inside of the house. Mm-hmm. And it looked like from the interior finishes 70s, 80s for that one-story addition.
So when do historically appropriate structures begin? They have to be 50 years old, I think, don't they?
50 years old, and they have to actually have his qualities that make it historically significant to deem it to be saved, is what I understood. Whereas this one does not have any historic qualities.
Mm-hmm. I believe it meets the guidelines.
Do I have a motion?
We moved that it would be approved as submitted.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Open up for discussion if there is any. No discussion, so we'll go ahead and take it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful. Passes. Flying colors. Thank you very much. The next several items we'll be discussing are regarding property at 316 Washington Street. We have a representative for that property come forward and state your name and address, please.
Afternoon, Commissioners. Scott Glass. I actually live at 306 Roland Drive in the city. I'm here representing Tony and Sherry Boyd, who actually live or will live at 316 Washington Street.
Excellent. Please, if we could go ahead and discuss application item number 1.
The first one, which is, I think the last step so I can read here. Of course, it's divvied up into 8 parts. They kind of interrelate. The first one is the addition of an exterior set of steps that would go from the existing back corner of the house down to grade. They would be designed and constructed to match. There are 2 sets. There's one long set of stairs at the back of the house, existing wooden stairs, wooden posts and rails. They would be built to match in material and design those stairs at the rear of the existing house, the main body of the house. They would go down and tie into a connector that would tie into action item number 2 that we're requesting, which is that a breezeway. Again, the columns, the square columns would match there are a couple of square columns at the back, which you can see in the elevation, the back of the second floor. That same simple square column with cornice that would match the cornice, not the really elaborate cornice at the front of the house, but the simpler cornice that's at the back second story, and a standing seam metal roof that would be a hipped roof, gabled primarily, but hipped back at where it ties back into the stairs. That would go that distance. I think the total distance, of course, I can't read that because that's too far away from me. The total distance would be 24 feet for the connector and stairs. Likewise, all of the appearance would be to match both those existing stairs at the back of the house and the square columns that serve the porch over the second floor. And I think that is it for that portion.
All right. Application is submitted.
We find that it does meet the guidelines, and I move that it be approved as submitted.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion regarding this one in particular? No? Hearing no discussion, we will call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. We'll note that action item number 1, the construction of the breezeway and such and stairs are approved as submitted. We can move along to action item number 2.
Action item number 2 actually comes from the back end of the property, all the way down on Pearl Street, where we're requesting to put in a new brownstone surface treated driveway with an entrance gate that would go from the Pearl Street all the way back up, with a turnaround for vehicles that would tie into what we're going to discuss with action item number, whichever one that is. To the garage, the back end of the addition. Looking at really that being done in just that very, very simple, let me find my notes here, brownstone surface treated type, the tar and chip style is what is typically it is referred to, and a new set of gates at the driveway entrance. We don't have a clue at the moment, gates, so it would, ultimately, if this was approved, it would be contingent on your getting a chance to review the gate itself. This is more than anything else the drive, so we can get access back to the garage.
Applications committee?
The drive, I guess, would resemble like pea gravel.
Yes.
We find that it meets the guidelines, and I'll move that it be approved as submitted.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
What about the gate?
Was the gate part of this?
Well, we did indeed, and we've had. Let's see, what do actually had in there, we did indeed ask for construct new gated driveway entrance, so yes, I'd have to return, or hopefully, maybe that's something that can be, very simple, submit to you guys for
So not
Secretary
the gate,
approval.
Just the driveway.
Just the driveway.
Yeah, because we do not know if the gate's going to look like.
Understood.
You want to table the gate?
I think that would make sense, yeah. I don't know if that's something that requires full board approval, or whether that's something that the Secretary can do.
It would require full board.
Okay, cool.
So we could table that till next month if you can,
Yeah.
so
If you can
add,
feel for what we might, you'll be around for me for us to discuss it? Yes.
we can add that to my motion that the gate be tabled until next month's meeting.
Excellent. So the amended motion, have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. Very good, thank you for that. Now, we'll move on to action item number 3.
Yes, number 3, we're looking at some alterations to the existing kitchen wing, which is that whole wing that sticks out the back that we were just talking about. To include several items, we want to replace the existing rear window, which is the window truly at the rear elevation, with a new French door, which will be the door that will access the stairs. The action item number 1. There is a ground floor window that's back behind. You can see dotted on that rear elevation that's into the unfinished ground floor that we would want to remove, because that's where the stairs would come down and connect that. And
Do you have does he have a laser where he can, is that here?
cool. Thank you, Robin.
You could just point that out?
Absolutely.
Because I did look at this, but
If I can do this without shooting anybody in the eye with it. Yeah, okay. Of course, the door I'm talking about, this is where the door would replace the existing window. That little dash line there is where the ground floor window would disappear and be framed in stucco. So that's back behind this is where the stair would come down. The other portion of the action item number 3 would be to replace the existing small pair of French doors that serve the deck patio with a larger set with transom over. Doesn't show on this, but it shows on the plan. I don't know whether you can get to sheet number A1 or not. Yeah, which would be here. There's a tiny pair of 2-foot doors in place, which means anytime you got to go out the door, you got to open both in order to do it. So we're asking that we actually install a pair of 2'6" doors, so you could actually do one leaf at a time. It would match the transom above. Also, I think in that same, let's see,
is that within the porch?
there's the porch patio right here.
That's covered, correct?
I'm sorry?
That's the covered porch.
No, it's not. It's open. It's open.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there should be a photograph in there. We also want to replace. Yeah, there we go. So that's completely uncovered. We also want to replace. We know this was a later edition window. I'm not quite sure about this, but we want to replace this odd conglomeration here with a pair of mold windows that would be over top of the sink area that in essence would go from right next where the wall adjoins this addition at the back to about over here, a pair of 3-foot by 5'6" mold windows in place.
The window that's next to the door would stay?
That would disappear. That's gone.
Okay.
We'd
The
like
only
to.
thing you're having there is a bigger French door.
Yes, just purely so we can get through one leaf at a time instead of trying to nuzzle through the 2-foot ones. So in essence, this would go from a 4-foot pair to a pair of 4-foot total to a pair of 2'6" or a 5-foot opening. That window would disappear. This window would disappear in favor of a pair of mold windows there. And let's see, that's the rear window, the later generation, and those are the 3 items in the or 3 areas of items in action item 3 request.
All right, Applications Committee?
We have reviewed this, and they are original, but this is really it's a no site view, so it's technically in the back of the house. It's not visible, therefore it would, for that reason, would meet the guidelines.
Okay.
And I will move that it be approved as submitted.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion regarding this particular action item? Okay, hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Great. Let
Thank
it
you.
show that that one is ready to go as well. We may move forward to action item number 4.
Number 4 deals with paint colors. We'd like to repaint the body of the house, the Kingsport gray. Let's see where I've got that in my files here. It's this one. Oh yeah, you got it. And the is that right? Let me make sure we got that. The body house would be. No, actually, the body of the house is all the Benjamin Ward Davenport tan. The other way around. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I had that mixed up. Would indeed be the Kingsport gray. All trim, the sailcloth, all shutters and ironwork, standard black.
Okay. Applications Committee?
Meets the guidelines, move to approve as submitted.
Second.
Any further discussion on paint colors? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
It's easy, isn't it?
Colors well thought out, match the house, ready for number 5?
Oh,
We could just get things like this all the time. Nice hand-drawn print.
action number 5 is the request to remove what we thought might have been later generation scored stucco at the foundation to restore the stone wall that's there. I was talking with Richard, who was smart enough to retrieve a sample. It looks like indeed it was probably a lime-based mortar on top of it, so it probably indeed was not a later addition. I think the request is still there, but obviously that's the purview of the board to decide. Like the look of the stone, we thought it would make sense to indeed repoint the stone as opposed to having the scored stucco, but that is the request.
Applications Committee?
Okay. I did a little in-depth study of this foundation, trying to decipher. This is a sample of the foundation. It's a lime mix, if you want to pass that down. It's got it's a little cement in there. It basically indicates that it predates 1920. The house, I believe, 1904.
1904.
So that would put it in the correct date. So we're looking at this and further discovered that the house was clapboard at one time. And I don't believe, if you look, I forget where I saw this. I think if you, I forgot now, it might be under foundations. But anyway, if they did have a stone foundation originally, it would have been cleaner and smoother stone. So I really don't believe that the foundation was ever stone. I think this is original to the house, and for that reason, I move that it be denied as submitted.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a second. Let's call for discussion. Oh,
Oh, no, you don't.
yeah, I did. And a motion, a second, and then call for discussion. I have a question. I guess as evidence in the photographs, there appear to be large sections
That's
where it does not have the stucco siding, the score stucco?
Yeah, I assume that's
Would-
fallen
It
off,
just
correct?
fallen off? over
Yeah,
time?
yeah, correct. There are several big chunks along the right side, and there are 2 or 3 places near, especially near the basement door on the left side.
So-
The rest of it gets fairly narrow.
So Commissioner Morris's professional opinion would be that because the stone is very randomized, I guess, as opposed to having a more finished flat surface, that it was purposefully covered at the time of construction with the stucco?
Yeah, it's very fashionable now, when people go into these old houses, they'll take plaster off a fireplace, for instance, and they'll see brick, and they'll say, oh, wow, this is great. Let's expose the brick, and they think this is neat. But it was never like that. The same thing with things like this, people look at the stone and they say, this is, it's real pretty, and it is. But the fact is that when it was built, it was strictly for structural reasons, unless the stone was smoother and just laid differently than what you see here. And so when they laid it like this, that it was always meant to be covered. And they would do that with brick. The house I have, which is much older, 1852, is a brick foundation, and it was carved and scored like this to look like limestone, actually. So that's the situation here. If you look at the windows, the basement windows, I didn't take any pictures of that, but you can see where the windows were set right at the stone.
Okay.
And the parging does indeed go in, and it goes beyond, it goes on top of the casing, which would have been exactly how it would have been built. So, and I would also say this, even if it was added, it would have been added pre-1920, so it would still become a historic, significant feature of the house for a different period.
If I may ask, in your motion requesting denial of removing the plaster, or not plaster, but stucco, the areas in which are evidenced by this photograph here, would that to be restored in any way, shape, or form, or just left the way it appears?
No. I'll amend my motion.
Okay.
That the existing stucco foundation be repaired and/or restored as necessary.
And complete all the way around?
Yes.
To complete it all the way around, I should say. Okay. Do I hear a second to that amended motion?
I'll second
Okay. Any further discussion on it then?
I would like to hear the applicant just as the interaction.
Okay.
He's got an observation, is it all right? Was that appropriate?
The front porch of this house, it has cut stone, which I think is original and should not be stuccoed over.
Oh, no, I'm not recommending that.
The foundation property.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
correct.
No, I agree, the porch is original also.
Okay.
So in this photo, is this the cut? This is the cut stone, correct? On the front
Yes.
porch. Okay.
Yes.
So it is a little tricky because they did obviously a whole scale renovation of the house and made it from clapboard to stucco. Obviously, they might have put this on, but I do agree that given the date and everything, it was probably put on at that time. So. But you could always integrate stone in the landscaping to get that. It's beautiful, but it is all through Lynchburg. They would almost never leave it unfinished because of the wear. And that's the other thing from a durability standpoint. The parging on top of that adds to the durability. You won't get freeze-thaw issues. So by leaving that off or pulling it off, you could actually eat away. The weather could erode away at the strength of the house. So there's a functional reason as well as historic and aesthetic.
No, my feel, and I'm glad that, Richard, you discovered the lime. I was hoping that perhaps it was done similar to the stone foundation work at Point of Honor, which was that, similar kind of stone work with the lime mortar infill. And I really didn't go far enough in terms of pulling something off to check for.
And by all means, check it further. I mean, I'm just going by eye here, but
Yeah.
that's the way it appears to me, that
Yeah.
this is line-based. So, and you can clearly see the difference between that stucco and the house.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So
The house was obviously much later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it might be easier for you to repair that than it would be to take it all down and
Yeah.
go,
It probably would. I think we just thought that with the massiveness of the stucco, the stone was there. If that made sense,
Yes,
it would be.
attractive.
Yeah.
For sure.
But understand.
Okay. All right, so we had a motion, a second, and any further discussion before we, all right, we'll take it to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh, in favor of our motion.
Correct.
Okay, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, I was trying to focus.
Correct.
Sorry.
That's quite all right.
Opposite day.
Okay, let's see. Moving on to number 6, which is a fence, I believe.
Yes, there is an existing. It's just a wire fence that's in place, if I remember correctly. I'm sorry.
The front is iron and down.
One side.
It's a wiring.
Yeah, it's just
to get that back.
Unfortunately, I didn't take a shot of it myself. It's just it's a probably 40s or 50s style wire fence that that's primarily transparent. That we were from a dog's standpoint. Otherwise, we're trying to do the same thing on the other side.
Is it which side of the, it said the left side, but
On the right side is where the fence is. The left side is open. Correct.
oh,
Yeah.
maybe I read it wrong. I thought it was the left. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want a new fence on the
And
left.
it was
Where's the
hidden
fence?
in the undergrowth and stuff there. So yeah. And
Okay.
unfortunately, I did not take a shot of that.
I have, hold on.
Is it something that, since I know that I've got to come back with the gate, that I might see if I can get a shot of what's there to table that item and come back with it also?
Well, I just want to ask you a question here. Just the siding, where's the fences? Oh, fences, hold on.
You want to look here?
All right, no, we don't have any shots. Can I take this? Sure. Is it similar to this?
It's not that elaborate, no. I think it's a rectangular pattern. I'm not sure if there was a hoop. Was there a hoop top to it? Do you remember? Oh, so it did. Huh? And again, I'm sorry, I didn't take a shot.
Not quite as tight, but similar.
Maybe that one, you can table that for the...
Yeah, I mean, since I've got to get back with the gate, I'd just as soon be sure that we're okay about it. So I'd ask that you table that one. If
I was looking on the left side and...
yeah.
Would we be allowed to send an advocate just to document what's there so that they can move ahead with everything but the gate? Anytime
Yeah.
you're really close and it's a very simple thing, sometimes.
Would love for that to be the case if that's
We
the
could
case.
send an advocate out to,
The advocate can approve it, the commission can approve it.
but they could confirm if it's replacing in kind, they
It
could
needs to be
document.
approved by the full,
Sorry, I lost my train of thought too. They can't confirm what's there.
are you replacing it in kind or?
In kind. We
Yeah.
would match the style that's on the right-hand side.
I'm just thinking if they have dogs and it's replaced in kind.
Okay, but is there a fence there now?
On the right-hand side, yes.
But
On the
where
left
you-
side, no.
And you want to put it on your left side?
We want to add it to the left
So that's not replacing in kind, that's a new fence.
Duplicated.
in a different location. So yeah.
So yes,
Gotcha.
it would need to
Gotcha.
come to the full commission.
Unless you have some documentation that there was a fence on that side.
The last time I was there was still in full spring growth, and I wasn't going to crawl around to find out. So yeah. I might be, now that everything's dead, I might actually be able to look and see. But
But if this committee is allowed to approve a fence that is not there, we approve them all the time, and we're approving a fence to match what's, doesn't it just follow that we could approve it with the condition that it matches the existing? Is that
Well,
anything?
I guess there is no existing on that side of the house.
Correct, but we are allowed as a committee to take an application and they say we would like to add a fence. And as long as it meets our guidelines, then we approve it. And if everyone agreed that if it met the
Yeah, if it
look
meets the
of-
guidelines, but we don't know what it looks like.
Right. We have.
Yeah, we've had this.
Evidence of what it
Okay.
looks like yet, so.
Okay.
And it may meet the guidelines, we just don't know.
So we can just table it with.
Table it.
And I'm glad to take shots and bring something, and see if I can find something on the left-hand side.
Sure.
I'll do likewise.
That's
We may
fine.
find something there.
So we'll,
Still stubs us.
Yeah. If you come back with poison ivy, it's your fault. Understand.
okay. So do we have to have a motion to table it?
I move that we table
Yeah.
the fence until our next meeting in September.
Okay. Second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor of tabling this item until next meeting?
Aye.
All right.
So moved. Okay, excellent. I think that was the last.
That's the last one.
Mr. Glass, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We
Appreciate
your
it.
time. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Keep doing the good work,
Thank you.
and I'll see you in September.
Let's see, we have finished item number 7, which means we move to number 8, which is regarding, if I get my computer to open up here. This one is 215 Capel Street. If we have a representative, please come forward to the table. State your name and address.
My name is Lauren Dionish. I'm one of the principal architects at Atelier 11, and I also serve on the committee, so I'm recusing myself, and my address is 3 Vista Avenue, Lynchburg, and also with me is our client, Larry Filiaggi. He and his son, Thomas, are partners in the 215 Cabell Street project, and do I give a description first?
Please.
Okay. So they bought this building a number of years ago. Previously, it had had some minor renovations, but never activated. And if you look at the photos, actually, Robin, since this is outdated, could maybe in the application there might be the photo. Sure, sure. It's a pretty notable building. I think probably a lot of people would recognize it once they see that photo. But the application has basically 2 parts. It's to add some parking, and the owner is wanting to use the building as a art gallery. And so to be able to use the building as an art gallery, they do need parking. And we met with Planning and Zoning, Kevin Henry, and he let us know that the parking does need to be on the same site as the buildings. We had originally proposed it on what we're calling Lot A, and we're only calling it Lot A. That's not a legal description. It's just to orient everyone. So this was Lot A. So the original application had the parking here, but you're not allowed to put parking on an unimproved, empty site. So also, Mr. Filiaggi and his son are not trying to overdo the parking. They would be, allowed to do more parking, but they are just doing the absolute minimum amount that's required for a art gallery, because I'm sure, as a lot of you folks know, there's a lot of activity on First Friday. Buses come around, people carpool, so they don't want to overdo the parking unless a need changed. Also, the reason for the positioning here is that this is its primary facade. They do own both lots. They are considered, 2 separate lots, but you are allowed to span lots with a parking lot. This is a accessory to the buildings. And so since Cabell Street is the historic street that everyone knows and loves for the nice view down it with the cobblestones, they did not want to put the parking here, of course. And then the parking could have been pushed further back to this position to be 20 feet off the line, but they would like to eventually landscape this or just keep it as a beautiful open lawn. So if you were a photographer photographing a very interesting facade, it's not marred by cars in the photo. Additionally, there's a residential property here and a residential property here. The further the parking gets from this property in perspective, the less these shrubs and bushes protect it. So by pushing it to the 20-foot setback, that's the closest they're allowed to go by planning and zoning guidelines. It actually protects this neighbor from the view of the parking lot. The other part of the application, there's actually three parts, is on this portion of the property, the ground is sloped towards the historic church, and it's above the floor line. Fortunately, it has fairly thick stone walls at the base that are just beautiful, but they are getting water infiltration, and so they'd like to regrade approximately 12 feet away from the building and put a low retaining wall. Your application shows the retaining wall being set, if this is the low piece of the property, where that's, a little bit below the floor level, the retaining wall would be approximately here, and the higher grass would be just below it. So it's not a 4 foot or 6 foot or something tall. It's a very low retaining wall to help give some definition to this and also just take care of the water issue. And then we would gently regrade the site to the rear of the property following the topographic lines. So the last part of the application is the fence. There's a residential property approximately here, and so this fence would connect to the building and go down about part way, end at the lot line, and that's, they don't need a fence, but they just thought that it would be a nice accommodation for this property owner to just have a nice privacy place there and help define the historic church. And this church on the inside is absolutely beautiful. They've put a lot of work into it. They've done all of the work with their own hands. It's going to be a lovely art gallery, and it's kind of a shame that I know it was used when I first moved here 4 years ago. His daughter was married in this, but they have not been able to get it activated. So by creating an art gallery here, they think that's a really great use for it, and hopefully will be a very festive place for First Fridays. And then, of course, just down the street is Point of Honor with a lot of activity. There's also a lot of activity at the bed and breakfast. So it will hopefully help Daniels Hill get back on the map of the lovely neighborhood that it already is, but most people don't know about it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that description. The Applications Committee, like to review?
Yes. Let's just open this one up for discussion, because it's a multitude of things. That existing concrete block building, in its present location, it seems that last parking, seems those last two parking would have a problem backing out of that thing with that building there.
Right, you mean this one?
Yes.
Well, they could have made a larger parking lot, and they could have done a big turn here with a 18-foot slot, but we felt that the square, as you know, it's called a parking courtyard, not a parking lot. So they are figuring their people that are visiting have some sense of space, and will pull in this lot. Then when they go to back up, they'll pull out, 3-point turn, and leave. So it's just a common sense approach that you come in, you pull in this, when you go to back out, you back out, 3-point turn, and you leave. However, if the committee feels that this should be enlarged, we could have a spur off the back and we could have a spur off the back here, but we just think that takes away from the historic nature. A nice square rectilinear parking lot is going to look a lot better. Also, they're planning a hedge here and some landscaping here as well. This would allow them to encase this with maybe a low hedge or something like that in the future, which would conceal the fact that it's a parking lot. I mean, it's going to be empty probably 70% of the time, maybe more.
What's the, I probably missed this. What's the material? Is it?
Gravel. So,
So there's not going to actually be lines demarcating the,
no.
okay.
No,
So
it's a
it'll
gravel lot.
just be gravel.
Yep.
The stone, the retaining wall, that is made out of stone. Do you have any?
We don't have a material yet, but, yeah, but stone, and so far, all the materials they've used have been very high quality and in keeping. You would see it when you're on the building side. You barely see it on the other side, but it would be stone or another natural material, not poured concrete. Yeah, so not poured concrete or something modern.
Is that something you would mind tabling, just that portion, so we could see the stone? Is that something you want to start construction right away?
Yeah, we could table that and bring in some samples.
Okay. All right. I move that it be approved with the following stipulations. The stockade or iron fence, well, wait a minute now, hold on. You got stockade, that's not permitted.
Sure, we'll do,
Stockade fence is not permitted.
this is,
So did you have a picture of that? Did I miss
It's
that?
over on the left-hand side, right here.
Oh, yeah, those are not permitted.
Right.
So it has to be a dog ear.
oh, okay.
Dog ear fence, and if I'm not mistaken, it can only be 6 foot high. See, we had this last week, and we found out it could be 8 foot high, but then
6
I
to
couldn't
8,
find 8 foot high again.
Mr. Martin, we put 6 to 8 feet, because I actually thought that in one of the last applications that question came up.
I thought so too, but I looked again and I could not find 8 feet. So I may be looking in the
I think
wrong
we're 5 or
place. But
6.
it said 6 feet was the limit. So while you're looking for that, I will move that, do we have to do the retaining wall? If we table that, is that a separate, I guess that would be a separate motion, correct?
We could strike the retaining wall completely from the application.
Eight feet on side and rear yards of residential.
8 feet?
Yeah, right here.
Oh. Is that, maybe I'm looking in this thing.
Yeah, that's zoning for the HBC guidelines. It says generally be no taller than 6 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do we have a conflict with what we're saying?
Just
We have two different
wouldn't just
sections?
this, wouldn't the stricter one apply, the 6 foot?
Yeah, maybe 6 feet applies based on our guidelines.
Okay, where did that one come from? Wasn't that our guidelines?
That was
No, that's
zoning.
the zoning ordinance.
City's guidelines.
Okay, so, okay. I move that on the fence, it would be of dog ear style, no taller than 6 feet. If an iron fence is used, you would have to resubmit, or do you have that? You didn't have a picture of that one?
We'll stick with the wood
Okay.
fence.
The courtyard meets the guidelines with the stipulation that if it is on the side, if it's on the rear yard, it has to be screened with hedges, shrubs, or fences. And if it is on a corner lot, it also needs edge screening on both the primary and secondary street, which means it needs screening facing Cabell as well as full screening facing C Street.
Okay, great. So we'll put shrubbery on this side and over here. Okay.
And the retaining wall will be tabled
Okay, we'll bring
For-
that back.
material list for next meeting, September.
So what kind of gravel is the
Pea gravel is, I
Yep.
believe, what we mentioned for the courtyard.
Thank you.
All right, do we have a second on that motion? Any further discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great.
Thank
You're all understanding of coming back about the
Correct.
materials for the retaining wall. Excellent, very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you for your work on that house. Building.
Doesn't say what kind of screenings are.
Let's see. Robin, if I am correct, we have several table items. All right, let me see if I can get to a list here. Tabled item number 1, the Lynchburg Art Club. Is there a representative? Yes. If you'll please proceed to the table, provide us your name and address, please.
I'm Philip Carlisle, 3954 Fort Avenue. And
Excellent.
when we were last here, you all wanted to know what this sign itself, the lettering, what it would look like, and we've submitted that. And it's the black and white part here. The green are just instructions for the printer. It's going to be on a pole that is, originally we had the sign on a sculpture. And we decided to remove it. So if you can imagine that this pole here holding the sign, just take it off and then turn the sign the other direction, where here it is vertical, we want it horizontal. So you'll have one of these poles like this. It's going to be painted tangerine, just as the sculpture will be. They'll be moved out closer to the street. This will be this way. That sign will be across it. It'll be set in concrete.
Single pole,
A single pole, just like this. Just take one of these off, and it'll be attached. There's actually going to be 4 little hyphens of metal to. Well, actually, I think it would come out like if this were the sign, it would come out one. This horizontal piece, and then a couple of little short ones in there to give it added stability. This is stainless steel out here, for this to be painted tangerine. The stainless steel is very heavy, so we want to make certain that it's going to stay there, that some kid's not going to swing on it, pull it down.
Is the placement where the sign is now, or is it where you're standing in the background?
It's the sign is going to be basically where the current one is,
Okay.
whereas the current sign faces out. This will be two-sided. The edge of it will come on that closer to the street. And I think there's actually in this one, you can see there's a yellow sign. So it's going to be close to the there's a little retaining wall. It's going to sit back of that retaining wall.
Yep.
And the base of it should be back about where the current sign is. The sculpture will go over in sort of the middle of that side of the yard.
What is the background color where the text is on the main body of the sign?
It's going to be white,
White, okay.
black and white,
Okay,
just the way that
perfect.
shows.
Applications Committee?
we find that this does meet the guidelines and move to approve as submitted.
Excellent. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent.
Thank you.
So very much. Happy sign making. All right, I have a request from Morris Construction regarding 1919 Rivermont Avenue. If you would address the commission, your name and address, please.
I'm Charlie Morris, project manager for Morris Construction, representing the homeowners at 1919 Rivermont.
And I'm Jennifer Wolfter, one of the residents.
We propose to replace the front columns with a fiberglass column. And then I believe Mr. Morris went and measured it, said it was 26. The proposed column that we had was 24. So I went back, double checked it. You are correct in your measurement of 26. So I pursued fiberglass column of 26. They don't have it. So they do have a wood columns comparable. It's more expensive, and when I presented to the homeowner, the additional maintenance that would require and the longevity of the fiberglass is what she would prefer. So these pictures here, there should be another one. That's with the 24-inch column scaled out onto the facade of the house. So I did that so that you could visualize what the difference of a 24-inch column looks like on a 20 or 26 on a 6,000 square foot house.
All right, Applications Committee.
I sympathize with you. I have composite columns myself. It just does not meet the guidelines, so we will have to open this up for discussion. I can't approve it because it doesn't meet the guidelines. So let's open that up for discussion. I'll begin by saying that by the picture, it looks no different. I don't know if that would change in real life or if it would make a difference to the trained eye versus the non-trained eye. But what were the wooden columns made out of?
Cedar.
Cedar?
Yes.
Now,
And they
cedar will last a long, long, long time.
Correct.
Our lifetime, anyway. And he told me there wasn't any cost difference, or very minimal.
It's about $1,000 for all four by the time it's all said and done. But that's not, in the scheme of things, it's not a ton of money, and that wasn't the main issue.
Okay.
The main issue was the longevity and the guarantee that these fiberglass ones are going to retain their structural integrity for forever, as opposed to the wooden ones that could be susceptible to bugs and rot and other things over time.
I
Fiberglass doesn't offer
I
that
have
problem.
one. My columns are fiberglass, my balustrade is wood, and the wood's already rotting. So, I understand.
So that was from the homeowner's side of the street. That's what they would prefer to do.
So anyway, that's my little input.
Any other discussion?
I do think that with the front-on photo, and it is helpful to have that, but you're seeing this building in motion as you go, and 2 inches, we've done projects where we've put a column in, we take it out, because we realized that the scale was slightly off, and we put a different one in. And so I do think that 2 inches does make a difference. I guess I would just ask, I would recommend that the existing columns be repaired. I know homeowners are looking, and it's a noble thing to say, I want this to last forever, but the sheer fact of historic buildings is about every 80 to 100 years, some major repairs have to happen. So the Lynchburg Museum is repairing their wood columns, and it's usually much less money than replacing. So, if cost is a factor and longevity, this has lasted over 100 years. So a repair typically will last, maybe not 60 years, maybe only 50. But the quality of wood that these buildings were built out of originally was so good, we can't match it now. So I get why people want to do artificial materials, but even the detail level, I mean, this house is 100% based on its columns, and I've seen houses like that where they underdo this column size, and it really looks bad. I mean, even you as a homeowner, if you're not, it's not like you're saying, I want to be a historic preservationist. Well, you are by buying one of these buildings, but you might be disappointed even by the difference in appearance. So, but also just doesn't meet the guidelines, and I would just strongly recommend that they be repaired, because I think you're going to have a better project with the repaired project versus brand-new columns.
I noticed that the two columns on the left seem to be okay. I think we're talking mostly about the two columns on the right. Is that correct?
They're in better shape than the two columns on the right, but all of them have integrity issues.
Yeah.
I was just there Friday, and they are in pretty bad shape.
And I might add, by the way, when I stated that our fiberglass, mine were gone. There was nothing there. The whole porch was gone. So it wasn't a replacement, so I wanted to clarify that.
The other option, and obviously this is just discussion, but is that you could go for the fiberglass, a base, even, the base could be 1 inch, 3/4 elevated, and then the wood column be put on top of that. And, sun and water are the killers, so as long as you keep paint on it and as long as you have it elevated and not, getting a little airflow under it the way we now do columns versus how they did them when they were waking up the moisture, you would have a very quality job, but you could get the proportion that's required. And if this was the rear, the side, I think this group, you've seen the applications come through, we've not been, ridiculously over the top. We could have complained about where Mr. Glass's portico came into a cornice and it abuts the cornice. It should be lower, but, we're trying not to be ridiculous. But this is the front. This is what makes this house special. And I do think, even though the superimposed, we're looking at white background behind it, when you're going at angles, you're going to see it. Plus, we all feel very strongly on the front side of the building, you just don't deviate from these guidelines, so.
All right. Is there a motion to come from, or any further discussion? Would you like to make a motion? Anyone would like to make a motion?
Everyone needs to make a motion on this thing.
Well, is one option the wood?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, the wood.
That matches.
Or do you have further questions for the applicant?
You guys have anything to add to it? I mean, how objectionable is I mean, she is correct. What destroys these older homes is lack of maintenance. And if you got the wooden I understand your concern, but she's right. And it's usually a lot of times the bases and the installation. If these are installed properly, if your base, even though you can use a wood base, but if your base is of a different material, that would last. And your columns are painted, and I mean they'll last the life of the house. And it's one of these things where the picture looks the same, but it would be really catastrophic if you got these things up and all of a sudden it's like, wow, they really do make a difference. They look so small now.
And
Mr. Little, do you have a
What is the existing base now? Is that also wooden?
It's wood.
Okay. So my house is very similar column wise, and the original ones are metal. The bases are metal with the mahogany column on there, and it does make a big difference as to how the longevity of it.
And Mr. Morris makes a point too that, thank you for buying this house and taking care of it, but probably there was a period on Rivermont where people were not taking care of the houses, and that's probably where the damage occurred. But the photo that's slightly oblique on the parcel viewer, it would be noticeable, that 2-inch, and our office has some expert Photoshop folks, and if we pick the right view, like straight on, it does look okay, and sometimes we don't do the oblique view because all of a sudden it becomes quite obvious that there's something. So I do think that even though the Photoshop is close, I think it's a notable change. 1 inch, I think probably no one could pick up, but
Yeah, scale and proportion on these kind of houses, especially something like that, that is the most dominant architectural feature of your house, are those columns. And so we're being very particular about that because of that very reason.
And it's not just 2 inches on one column, you have to multiply that by 4 all the way across, so it would make I agree with Commissioner DeYonish, I think it would make a difference.
What do you think? Is that, I mean,
we love this house. We moved to Lynchburg for this house. We found it online and said, holy moly, can you believe you can buy a house like this? And we moved our entire family for this house. We're extremely invested. I think having lived here 3 years and now having some of the realities of living in this house we love this house and absolutely the columns make it. Having said that, the longevity issue is of concern to us, as well as the fact that now, when we bought it, there was a beautiful paint job over all of that wood. And what we found over the last 3 years is that there is significant rot on the entire front facade of the house, as well as the other 3 sides. And when I think about how we're going to maintain this house over the next 30 to 50 years, you can pry my cold dead body out of this house when I'm dead. The additional maintenance costs of having to maintain wood columns, that is money that over the next 10 years or 15 years or 20 years is going to stop the rest of the rotted wood from falling down. And so I think there's a little bit of a trade-off here.
these columns will last 150 years or longer if all they need is to be properly maintained. A cedar, cedar does not rot. Cedar is going to take a lot to destroy cedar, and they will not rot. Mahogany, as he said, that's mahogany and cedar are the 2 preferable woods.
Absolutely, but properly maintaining it does cost thousands of dollars.
Well, no,
averaged over each year. If you assume that it has to be stripped and repainted every 5 to 7 years,
you don't strip it.
But you do scrape away any stuff that's peeling.
Right,
and I think, broadly speaking,
but you're still going to have to paint a composite column. If you're painting your house has to be painted every say 7 years. So your columns are going to have to be painted with it. And a good paint job, you're not going to have peeling, crusty paint on a 7-year-old column. I guarantee it. Have you ever heard of Abertron, by the way?
No.
All right. You need to know about Abertron. I'm renaming my house Abertron instead of Rivermont. The Abertron house. It's a great, great material for repairing rotted wood. And, from what you're saying, you have a lot of issues with that.
I guess just the trade-off that we're saying is when we've looked at these numbers over the next 10 years.
Oh, I know. I hear you.
You can have the extra 2 inches on the column.
But I guess what I'm saying to you is your argument, these columns aren't going to cost you anything in maintenance. The cedar columns versus the composite. Not in your lifetime.
They both require paint every
Yeah,
single
they
year.
both. You're not going to. The composite column may not require paint, but you're certainly not going to paint your porch and leave your faded white columns, even because they're composite. You're still going to paint them. And my point is, if the paint job is done properly on either one of them, it's not going to require. Your paint will chip off your composite column just as it would on a wood column. What you're worried about is rot, and what I'm saying is the maintenance is not going to be any different on either one of them, unless they shouldn't be. If they're installed correctly, there won't be any maintenance cost one over the other.
Do you agree with that? Because I feel like that's not what we talked about. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, and I don't want you to go away unhappy, that's why
Now,
I want you to,
If
know,
it's
talk to
not
you about this.
maintained, yes, the fiberglass will outlast the wood if they're directly compared to not being painted. But as far as over the course of it, as long as everything's painted sequentially, you should be fine. But
Well, I mean, it sounds like you guys have made your decision, so
We have got the guidelines that we just can't.
Right.
But
deviate.
and what I'm just trying to say is that you're not going to have the issues you think you're going to have. It's not going to be a maintenance issue with a new cedar column from a reputable company that's going to manufacture
I
these.
understand. They do come with a 10-year warranty, but I guess the mindset of, and the peace of mind of having that fiberglass column, where if there is some paint that flicks off the top corner of the column or something, they don't have to climb up there in the next year to get that one area and worry about rot if it's fiberglass. So I think that's the main point of concern, where if there are any openings or any areas that, chip off or get damaged or whatnot, that they don't have to worry about that having severe deterioration over.
And maybe the manufacturer will have a solution to that. There may be some sort of cover. You're talking about where the capital would overlap
That's the main point
over
of
the
concern,
beam.
yes.
And they may be something that could cover that. So again, yeah. So proper installation, you can address all those problems, I think.
Additionally, you were smart and bought a brick house. So that does, but it has a lot of wood accents, it's true. But those are, and if I hadn't been through the experience of having a column turn out the wrong proportion, and then I own the columns, of course, and replace them with what I really need to have on there, I would say, but also we do a lot of Photoshop, and we know that it's the angle and you see this house on angle all the time on Rivermont, so I really think it's sometimes sad to a homeowner when they put something up that's proportionally different than they thought, and then they're like, whoa, it looks spindly, dang it, So it's not just, it is the guidelines, but I do think that you were just, the safest bet is that house looks great with those proportions, so.
Do we have a motion?
I move that it be denied as requested.
That's all you have to move, isn't it?
I guess.
Yeah. Second.
Yeah, I believe so.
The wood columns with a different base is totally acceptable.
And with a
And
flashing
I
or
don't think they
something
have
on
to
top.
come back, do they, Tom, if they replace in kind?
No, they do not need to come back.
So you do have, you can move forward with that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
You can also.
thank you.
Just so you know, you can appeal this within 15 days to City Council.
Okay.
All right?
thank you.
Thank you all very much.
I believe we have one more item. We requested to table that to next month. It was a rear
Oh, okay.
porch.
Yes.
So we're going to stew on that and then talk about that more.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that okay with you? That you table that? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. They didn't have enough information for us to review, so
I didn't see anything on that. All it says is front columns. I hate to do that, but
Right.
you buy these houses,
Let's see, next item would be 317 Cabell Street. Is there a representative for 317 Cabell Street? No, it does not sound like it, so we can move to, let's see, 1515 Madison Street. Is there a representative?
Which one?
I think it was doing a fence and a shed. They were doing
The fence is up.
yeah, the fence, but they were talking about a shed on the backside.
And I told her, I saw it, and I called her. He did anyway.
Okay.
My name is Jerry Tidy. I live at 1515 Madison Street. This is Mr. Storozum, who is my legal counsel, to deal with some of the legal issues that we spoke about last time in July's meeting.
So at the last meeting, Ms. Deanich's motion to table basically was looking for 3 more pieces of information. One was site map showing where the car shed was going to be situated on the lot. Second was a list of materials and dimensions, and then Mr. Tidy is going to speak to those shortly. And then the third one, which was a big sticking point, was the status of the alley as to whether or not it was a public alley. At the time of last month's meeting, the city assessor's office had maintained to your commission that it was public property, and therefore, and this is critical to the guidelines, because if it's public property, then technically it's visible to the public. The public could walk right up there and take a look at it. That matter has been clarified. I went to see Mr. Boyer in the assessor's office and I was trying to find out where the source of the problem was, because we've already looked at the deeds, or at least the initial deeds to this property. And it turned out it was a 1971 deed with a survey recorded with it, in which the use of the alley was just omitted by the deed writer. It just said an alley. It just described the property going up to an alley. Every deed prior to that described the alley for the use and enjoyment of the abutting properties, or it described for this particular property that it had the use and enjoyment of the alley. And it goes all the way back to 1884 when Mr. Blackford deeded this property. He owned all of the surrounding properties, and he gave the use and enjoyment of the alley to any abutting property, which now number 5. Mr. Tidy basically runs along the entire length of the alley, and then there are 4 properties on Pearl Street that abut in varying degrees to the alley.
But doesn't it have to be in their deeds that they have use of that alley?
In whose deeds?
In the deeds of the abutting property owners.
I know it's in, I haven't researched all of them. That was really not germane, I don't think, but it certainly has been in there, at least to some extent. It probably exists in all the deeds, except for, I believe, Mr. Cavan's property. It was written, a survey was done by the same person, and a deed was written there, which also didn't mention it. And from that point forward in 1971, and I think his was in 1972, all the deeds going forward never mention anything about the use of the alley. However, deeds contain something called a derivation clause, which you've probably seen at the end of a property description. It'll say, it being the same property deeded to the grantor by so-and-so. And that's present in all the subsequent deeds. So there's no question that it's the same, that nothing has changed. It's just that the deed writer got lazy and didn't do his job properly, because it's a significant attribute of the property. And because it's a common use alley and nobody actually owns it, at least on paper nobody owns it, it's treated in the law as being co-tenancy. All 5 people are tenants in common for this deed. The city, once it figured all this out, they said they probably wouldn't they created a separate tax parcel for it. It's now on the GIS. And I can show that to you.
So he actually modified it?
Yeah, they modified it, yes. They changed the appearance of Mr. Boyer. Emailed. I had a discussion with Mr. Irwin, told him I'd researched the change. He said, well, we've also researched it, and yes, you're right. I can read you the letters if you want. In any event, everybody's on the same page. It is clearly not city property. And he said that it's of so little value, probably no more than $500, that it wouldn't generate more than $5 of tax revenue for the city. It would cost much more to administer that than it would be to make it worthwhile. So right now we'll probably just continue on in this format. Many other types of common interest communities exist in different ways. You can have a condominium where somebody owns the common space, or you can have situations like some lakefront properties where nobody owns the actual lake. It's all the land's been divided up, but nobody thought to mention the lake, and so every property essentially that has use of the lake is taxed at a higher rate because they're getting some value, and the city gets what it needs, or the county, or whatever jurisdiction it might be. So anyway, so it'll probably continue along unless there's an issue, or unless someone moves to change ownership, something like that. Those are possibilities. But
so it's private alley as
It is indeed a private alley.
Okay.
5 properties have the equal right to use the alley. And it's in tenants in common. It's an indivisible right. Basically, any one of them can use the whole thing, but you can't prevent another person from using the whole thing.
Right.
So, and if you do, then it creates a legal situation called ouster, and you go to court and all that sort of thing. So, so that basically, that issue's resolved. If anyone wants to see it, I don't know if you can put it on the overhead, or I can pass it around if that would be simpler. But you can see it's now called 1511 Madison Street. They put in the dimensions of it and so forth. And I do have the emails from Mr. Boyer and Mr. Irwin verifying that that is in fact the case. So given that that is the case, it really is the key to the guidelines for secondary buildings. It pretty much, I looked through them again just before the meeting, and I think Mr. Tidy's building pretty much hits every one of them. It doesn't offend any guideline regarding secondary buildings. They recommend that they be located at the rear of a building, not readily visible from the street. It's not visible from the street. They recommend that for a carport, and this is, we're calling it, I guess, a car shed, you can, whatever, and they should not have flat, commercial carports usually have flat roofs and metal support columns. Those are not compatible, but this is not such. It is made with a gable roof of metal, older metal. Smaller in scale in the primary building, simple in design, use of gable roofs if the main dwelling has a gable roof, which it does. Located as traditional for the street, near an alley or at the side of the dwelling, not close to or attached to the primary building. It meets that. Compatible in design, shape, materials, and roof shape to the main building, which it is. It's located along rear alleys or towards the rear of the lot. Secondary buildings may have, I'm sorry, that's not relevant. Even along rear alleys or rear lot lines, standard prefabricated buildings may be considered. But this is not. This is an attempt to recreate something historical, but with a modern use. Don't need a stable, but a place to park your car. In his case, Mr. Tidy works on older cars. And so I think other than the specifics that he's provided to the commission, I think we're probably in pretty good shape, unless I've missed something. So, Mr. Tidy, or any questions of me? I'm just kind of more the legal advisor.
I just have a question on that. So that now becomes a city-owned? No, a non-city-owned lot.
No,
so when they do that, they give it a separate parcel?
They give it a parcel number as if it were private property.
Okay.
But it really has no single owner to the extent that they feel it's worthwhile taxing somebody for it.
And so that's common access
They could issue
to your
5
property, I guess?
Pardon?
That's common access?
It's called...
The houses?
Yes, all five adjoining houses can access it equally.
And the one, and this one?
Oh, yeah. Well, 4 plus Mr. Tidy's.
If I may clarify a little bit, there is no physical access to the alley since 100 years or more ago. Mr. Little's familiar, our properties adjoin. There's absolutely no access that he can access the alley, nor is there from
610 to that alley.
Mr. Tidy's driveway is at grade level with the alley. His house is at grade level with the alley, so it functions for all practical purposes as a driveway. The other adjoining property, there's an elevated wall on one side. And so one owner, Mr. Cavins, has accessed it for doing some maintenance on a carriage house that abuts or is very close to the edge of the alley, and that's the easiest way to maintain the exterior of that particular building, which he has the right to do under the deed.
Yes,
I think the fact that it's not visible from the street, that's not a public alley, then it would meet the guidelines.
Yeah.
Am I not mistaken?
That's correct.
My only question is if there's any specifics about roofing that we need to address, or is that?
Well, you can't see it.
Right.
It's just like,
Okay.
so, but you put a metal roof, didn't you?
Yes, the metal roof actually has a cultural history. Just for your interest, it's from Schuyler, Virginia. And it actually is the roof that was on the building that the fictitious sisters that appeared in the television series, their names I forget now, but the real sisters that the fictitious sisters were based on in the Waltons, this is their building. And my friend who lives next to me, who gave me the roof, who owns this building in Schuyler, says that I forgot, Mr. Hamner, I think, was the creator of the television series. He says that he believes that the grandmother of Mr. Hamner was a former owner of this building. It was a store in Schuyler and supposedly a dance hall and speakeasy in the 1930s. So this is a roof that has cultural significance that I saved from the junkyard, and I feel it is very historically appropriate because I have a photograph from 1923 that wasn't really well defined enough for some of you members to recognize clearly, but I can assure you that I made every attempt to reproduce the original stable roof in its form as I perceived in 1923, and prior to that, the Sanborn map from 1907 clearly shows this building with exactly the same dimensions, roughly 40 by 20.
Is Chestnut Street still there?
Chestnut Street is no longer, that's a paper street.
So you really can't see this from anywhere?
Not any part of my property can be seen
Well,
from
I mean-
the historic district, bar the front view of the house.
So I guess my point is it may or may not meet the guidelines, but since it's not visible,
Right.
it's a moot point.
Well, that's
No?
not entirely true. You can
Okay.
see it from the adjacent property, and I believe in the fall you can see it from the expressway. The reason Mr. Tidy is here is whether or not you can see it from somewhere is entirely up to you and whether or not it meets the guidelines. The reason he's here is because he is in a historic district, and any work in a historic district, regardless of whether it can be seen from a street or not, requires a certificate of appropriateness. It's up to the HBC to determine whether or not it meets the guidelines and if it should be approved. Okay? So, but I can assure you it can be seen from the adjacent property.
Once the other materials, thank you, they're clearly defined on the drawings. I probably overlooked the note. I just wasn't 100% sure about the roof, so I just wanted to double check that. But, I really appreciate the site plan, that helps us, and then the corresponding floor plan is a big help. So I personally don't have any questions now that I've got all this information, but if anyone else does.
So we would need a motion as to whether,
I'd like to move approval of the petition.
okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We do have a second. Any further discussion on it? No?
If it turns into a dance hall, let us know.
Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right. It was a vote of 5-1, and it does pass, so you may proceed with the work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tidy, and sir, we appreciate your information as well. Right, it appears that the meeting has come to an end. We've run out of items to discuss. Any new business that needs to be addressed? Okay. All right, we can go ahead and call the meeting adjourned.